so many challenges along the way. Maybe highlighting what I think is the biggest challenge internally for a company as you're growing is making sure everybody is aligned and rowing in the same direction. And it's really easier said than done, especially when you have where we are in a space where it's multidisciplinary. You have people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, maybe speak different languages.
Hmm.
And so how do you get everybody to really understand the most important things that we're working towards? Other things are going to come up and you need to address them. Other things come up and they're just distractors. How do you remain lightning focused
Hmm.
on those things that are the most important for attaining the company goals and growing the business, which is always corresponding to getting your customer what they need.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Business of Learning podcast. My name is Joao Camargo, and my guest here today is Elizabeth Ann Stringer, who is the COO at NashBio. Elizabeth, thank you so much for being here today, and welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
100%. I would love to start off in the exact same way I start every single one of these conversations, which is just you sharing a little bit more about yourself, a little bit more about NashBio, and any other context you want to tell the customer about the business.
Yeah, thanks. By background, I am a scientist. Started off as a physics major, then wanted more applied work. And so in grad school, went on to neuroimaging and neuroscience. And then still applied yet in my postdoc. Really more in the clinical setting and understanding disease.
Hmm.
But a focus of my work has always been in data and analysis, computation. I actually did my postdoc out at Stanford and um, a great experience and so much where scientists were taking what they were learning in the lab and then applying that in business and industry. And so
Hmm.
that really led me on my career path outside of academia, where I've spent time in real world data.
Hmm.
So data collected in the clinical setting, either claims based data from insurance companies or electronic health record based data
Hmm.
in the clinic. And trying to understand more about healthcare generally and how we can do a better job of treating patients.
Hmm.
Um,
Amazing.
my first company outside of academia, we were in the opioid space. So that was actually my specialty in grad school and in postdoc. And this was before the opioid epidemic
Mm.
really hit America. And so that first company was really focused in working with insurance companies on understanding their patient population that was in pain, being treated with opioids, leading to really poor outcomes. And so,
Hmm.
using that claims based data to identify those patients, identify the practitioners, physicians who were not doing a great job and maybe needed just a little more support for caring for their patients.
Hmm.
So had a lot of fun building that company, about 7 years. Then it was time to leave and move over to NashBio. NashBio is a clinico genomic
Mm.
data and analytics company that supports life science companies with their precision medicine goals.
Hmm.
And so for me, it was what is a bigger data set than the human genome. So I was
Hmm.
really intrigued to join the team at NashBio and help grow the company.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all that. I wanted to just also highlight a couple of things. I think Stanford is such an amazing hub for health in general, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure you're familiar with Andrew Huberman, who is also a professor at Stanford,
Yes,
and
of
everybody
course.
loves Andrew Huberman. He actually came to Toronto 2 years ago or so to do a lecture, and I went because I also love Andrew Huberman. But there's also many other professors, many other amazing scientists from Stanford. So really awesome that you went there as well. And moving on to the data part, I think this has been a recent pattern from some of the conversations that I've had as well. Is that there's such an overwhelm of data everywhere about everything. But knowing how to utilize that data in the right way is what really makes a difference when it comes to achieving patient outcomes, business outcomes, whatever that might be. Talk to me a little bit more about that dynamic and what you guys are doing. And you don't have to give me the whole scientific spiel here for everyone. I'm sure we could be here for a couple hours, but just an understanding of how that partnership happens when you are working with a life sciences company and what you guys are doing to help them really understand and utilize that data in the right way.
Yeah. Maybe breaking down the clinicogenomic aspect of the
Sure.
data. So important to mention, NashBio is a wholly owned subsidiary of Vanderbilt University Medical Center. And Vanderbilt was really at the forefront of precision medicine. And they, decades ago, decided to really invest in the infrastructure to make precision medicine a reality. And Nash Bio was founded as the commercial arm to the database that VUMC built.
Hmm.
And so it is a collection of the clinical data, so a representation of the electronic health record, uh, de-identified, of course. So, stricken of all of those patient identifiers. So you're left with just an avatar of an
Sure.
individual that can't be traced back to the patient. Um, and Vanderbilt has a informed consent process where patients coming into the clinic can elect to have their residual biospecimens used for research purposes. Most important of which is that residual blood that can be then spun down into the DNA, where then we can extract that genomic code of an
Hmm.
individual. And so this is uh, such an important resource, particularly in the pharma and biotech space, where uh, we know that when a drug can be shown to have links to genetics, it's 2 to 7 times more likely to make its way through the FDA process and get approved for
Hmm.
use.
Hmm.
When our customers come to us, they have these research questions. They're either studying a particular disease of interest. They have their pipelines, and so our data can be used all along that R&D pipeline.
Hmm. Hmm.
So, an example in that early stage is when we think about discovery, might be trying to find uh, a therapeutic for heart disease,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
so they can use our data set to say, of these patients with this condition, what are those genes that are implicated in somebody having heart disease, or
Hmm.
maybe
Hmm.
it's progression. Some people, have heart disease and do pretty well, and others progress quite rapidly. What are the genes that are implicated there? And then we want to design a drug around those genes of interest.
Hmm.
Um, it can be later in the pipeline. So the most expensive part of the pharmaceutical industry is really taking drugs through clinical trials.
Hmm.
There's a lot of candidates that they have, and again, they wanna select those that are gonna have, the greatest chance at getting approved at the end of the day. So our data set can really help them prioritize those drugs that they choose to send
Hmm.
through to clinical trials,
Hmm.
or it could help them select those patient populations that are gonna do the best with the drug that they've developed.
Amazing. In a sense, and sorry to interrupt you here, but in a sense, it gives them that full clarity of what the right information that they need to know. So it's not just the information; it's the right information that they need to know to then move everything forward from there on, which makes a lot of sense.
Highly specific, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. And tell me a little bit more. I love to actually just shift the conversation into Nash Bio itself here. Tell me a little bit more about the conversations that are had with a lot of these companies, and really just looking at a growth sense now. Being the CEO of the company, there's many things that you are overseeing, I can imagine, and there's often a million different priorities there. But to start that customer journey or the operations in itself, there has to be that initial conversation. And a pattern that I've noticed in a lot of the, excuse me, in the conversations that I've had here in the podcast is that usually some of the first hurdles to cross is customer awareness and then the customer education on the real value. Is that also the case for you guys?
Uh, Absolutely. Um, so, it's interesting, particularly um, in a large pharmaceutical company. Our clients, there are a lot of users of data across the company, and we might be working with one group over here, and they don't realize, hey, you have access to all of this data. So even
Yeah,
educating them, if we're working with another group within the company, and they can access the data. So yes, letting them know that this data is available, and um, it is fairly recently that. Um, it's really been accepted that real world data can be used,
hmm
uh, particularly for regulatory purposes. I mean, the FDA is still trying to, they recognize the value, but still trying to understand how will we use this data, since clinical trials are really the gold standard when it comes to data being used.
sure.
And so that's one of the things that we spend a lot of time educating our customers about, the value of real world data and
hmm
the differences in real world data with clinical trial data when that's what they're so used to using. And
hmm
it really opens the door for the ability to answer more questions. The clinical trial data is great for answering these very specific questions that are absolutely necessary. But you can really widen the aperture when it comes to what you can answer with real world data.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense because once they have that, I won't call it proof of concept because they haven't implemented it yet. But once they see the real world um, possibilities of it, then it just becomes a little bit easier for them to, I would assume, hey, yeah, maybe this is something that we want to try out as well. And leading into that as well, I think something that I always love to highlight is that business is not always just sunshines and rainbows, right? There's so many complexities that have, and as leaders internally, so many challenges that we have to go through and push through and get the team to also try to solve a lot of these challenges and these problems. So I'd love to hear from you. What are some of those challenges when you're looking to keep the company growing? Of course, reach the impact that you guys want to have, but also growing the company as a result, because if the company doesn't grow, the impact doesn't happen, and it has to be, I guess, a chicken or the egg type of situation, but the company always has to grow as a initial or a result of it.
Yes, amen. And so many challenges along the way. I maybe highlighting what I think is the biggest challenge. Internally for a company as you're growing is making sure everybody is aligned and rowing in the same direction.
Mm,
And it's really easier said than done, especially when you have where we are in a space where it's multidisciplinary. You have people coming from a lot of different backgrounds, maybe speak different languages.
mhm,
And so, how do you get everybody to really understand the most important things that we're working towards? And other things are going to come up and you need to address them. Other things come up and they're just distractors. How do you remain lightning focused
mhm,
on those things that are the most important for attaining the company goals and growing the business? Which is always corresponding to getting your customer what they need.
mhm, mhm. How much do you think that misalignment, and not even just the misalignment in the vision, but maybe in the operations themselves as they're happening, how much do you think that affects the customer's output, the customer results, but even that first initial customer engagement to either make them aware or have those initial opportunities for conversations for opportunities to a possible partnership, a possible sale? How much do you think that happens?
Yeah. Um, well, it can certainly result in missing deadlines, or maybe just not the best customer experience. I mean, I think that that's one of the things that we try to be focused on is uh, consultative, supporting our customers along the way. And when people are juggling too many things, the customer's not getting the attention that they need.
Hmm.
And so I do think it's important to um, make sure that everybody realizes that um, while we are trying to grow and look at new opportunities,
Hmm.
let's not neglect those customers that we currently have.
Sure.
'Cause they're going to be the ones that are um, eh, you know, representing, how well we do at serving their needs.
Hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Of course, the foundation has to be there before you actually add things on. Of course, and if you had to maybe give yourself a piece of advice, knowing where you guys are at now and what's the next level that you're trying to get to, and actually, I want to attach a second question to this a little bit later on here, but just leaving it here now. If you have to give yourself maybe a piece of advice, or hey, through this experience that you've had now working at NashBio and where you guys are trying to go, what would you tell yourself when you first joined the company that would make things much, much simpler in where you are now today?
Oh, wow. Um, uh, so I think um, being patient and really making sure that you're tuning in to um, the actual challenges that the customers are facing,
Mm,
right? So we have this amazing data asset. Um, it's less important to talk about that data asset and more important to talk to the customer about the challenges that they have
mhm,
and then connect with them on how the data can help with that specific challenge.
mhm. Sounds like it's just going back to the customer, 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 right? The orientation that sometimes leaders just forget simply.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that that's for me coming from academia, scientist. I love science. This is quite applied science that we're doing. But one of the things that academia is missing is that person to person engagement. So it is one thing that uh, I think about a lot because of the contrast with um, my path coming up through academia and realizing what was missing and not as rewarding
Mhm.
there and what's rewarding to me working in industry. I want to help people get what they need,
Yeah.
solve a problem, work through a puzzle, and yeah, you can't lose sight of that.
Amazing. I love that. And then here's the question that I wanted to attach to it, which I think can allow for us to kind of just take the roof off or the cap off in thinking. So you can go wherever you want with this. But let's say you had a magic wand, Elizabeth, and you could just wave this amazing wand to solve one challenge, obstacle, whatever you like to call it, in the business that would then allow you to hit all your growth goals, revenue goals, client acquisition goals, whatever they might be in the back end. As I said, I think so many times we are focused on a million different priorities as leaders, and it's hard to just pick the right ones that are going to give us the highest leverage return. So for this one, you just get one thing. You wave that one, that thing gets solved. All the growth goals happen. What do you want to solve?
Yeah. Um, the I think the standardization of the data and
Hmm.
making that data really easy to use. Um, so uh, within Vanderbilt's health system, there is so much data out there, and I think this is probably a theme when you're talking to any company that is really reliant on data. Um, we are in a new age of using data. So that means that a lot of data still sits in isolated silos.
Hmm.
And so it can be really challenging to bring all of that data together in a harmonized manner to where it can be
Hmm.
readily used for analysis. And that's a lot of what NashBio does. Um, but there are a lot of challenges with bringing all of that data
Hmm.
together. And so if I could wave a magic wand, it would be, advancing us a couple decades to where we've had more time to build
Mm,
that infrastructure that's really needed to bring together all of these disparate data
hmm,
points that can really help tell that full story of a
hmm.
patient's journey.
Interesting. And that sounds like it's more on the internal side of things. Is that correct?
It is,
Hmm.
yeah.
And then how about if I were to ask you on the external side of things as well? And I usually don't, but you got me curious. So how about on
Yeah,
the yeah.
on the external side of things, it would be also magic wand advance us a couple decades to where um, real world data is used daily to help in the life science space,
Mhm.
so that um, everybody really understands the utility of
Mm,
real world data and also the limitations. Right, nothing comes
yeah,
without
of course.
limitations, and so um, uh, advancing everybody's knowledge
Mm,
and our customers' knowledge about real world data.
hmm.
Um, Again, how it can be used, what those limitations are, um, and that can really fast track a lot of the conversations that we have
Yeah.
with our
Yeah,
customer.
and I think that ties back to what we were saying before, is like it's the awareness and the education of this exists and the value that it provides you, right? Oh, that's pretty awesome. Amazing. Elizabeth, I have one final question for you here, which is actually also not a question from me. It's a question from our last guest to you, and they had absolutely no idea who you were. So
Okay.
here's the question. You ready for it? The question is, what is more important for success? The best product slash service in a space or the best salespeople in the space?
Um, yeah. So I'm always going to have to go with the people side of the equation. I think uh, it's the one thing that is true regardless of what industry you're in, whatever type of company you have. eh, Companies are made up of people, and
Yeah.
your customers are made up of people, and so you have to be able to build that rapport on a basic, human level and engage with them. Again, it goes back to our previous um, talking about asking the customer
Yeah.
about the challenges they have. You're never going to get the product placed if you don't really understand the challenges and the
Mhm.
problems
Mhm.
that the customer is trying to solve. So you can have the best product in the world and never get it placed if you're not able to make those connections on a very basic human level.
Amazing. I love that answer. And the person that actually asked that question had the exact same answer as you. So
Oh,
there
okay.
you go. There you go. But Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time. This has been such an incredible, insightful
Thank you.
conversation. Yeah.
Really
Where should people,
appreciate it.
for sure, where should people go if they want to learn a little bit more about you and also, of course, a little bit more about NashBio?
Absolutely. You can go to NashBio's website, nashbio.com, and learn more about us there.
Amazing. I will leave as many links as I can down below here if you want to check any of them out. And if you are still hearing this conversation up until now, you want to enjoy more conversations like this, please also hit the subscribe button and I will see you on the next episode. Elizabeth, thanks again for your time.